Hey everybody, Craig Hester here with R2AWatches.com, and thank you for joining us again. Today we are going to be talking about the Caspian Sea Monster from Vostok Europe, and we're actually talking about two very different versions of the Caspian Sea Monster. I purposely went real divergent in terms of movements and colors and styles and so forth with the Caspian Sea Monster today. If you are watching this on YouTube, like I always say, you want to hit like and subscribe because we are loading videos all the time now, and you want to get that notice so that you will see when we have something new loaded. If you're watching this on Facebook, you want to join the group Vostok Europe Timepieces. It is a closed group on Facebook, and it is the best place to learn about all the latest news about the watches at R2AWatches.com and to join friends who love our watches and share all kinds of great information on that group. So you want to do that today. Like I said, we are talking about the Caspian Sea Monster today from Vostok Europe. If you are not familiar with Vostok Europe, I'm going to give you a brief introduction, but you can find out a lot more at R2AWatches.com, where we are regularly loading videos on our blog. Particularly, there are several videos that talk about the history and how they construct watches and how they design watches. And also, really the best place is our YouTube channel, R2A Watches. Vostok Europe is a boutique watch brand based in Vilnius, Lithuania, and they build watches for going to extremes. Every watch is 100% in-house designed. All of the elements are 100% custom, and every watch is hand-assembled at their facility in Vilnius, Lithuania. One of the things that I love about Vostok Europe and the fans of Vostok Europe love is that they build every watch around a story or a theme or an inspiration. In this case, it is the Caspian Sea Monster. Now, what is the Caspian Sea Monster? Well, it is not one of those monsters of yore that were on the maps that said, oh, beware, here there be monsters that look like a dragon. No, it is actually an aircraft, or, well, maybe a boat. It all depends on how you look at it. The Caspian Sea Monster is actually was the first watch that Vostok Europe ever produced with Tritium Tubes, and we're going to talk about that more later, especially because that is a very important feature on this watch as it uses the Hairlights. I will get back to that. But they were the first watch that Vostok Europe produced with Tritium Tubes, and it again, the inspiration of the Caspian Sea Monster. What exactly is that? Well, it's also referred to as the Ekranoplan. That was this crazy-looking vehicle, and let's call it a vehicle because it's kind of a cross between a plane and a boat, that was built in the 1960s by the Soviet Union. They were really interested in this technology, which is called ground effect vehicles. So basically what you're looking at is an odd, kind of think about the spruce goose that that Howard Hughes built, this odd combination of boat plane that flies right across the top of the water, about 20 meters across the top of the water, and it creates what they call a ground effect, which is this cushion of air. It's kind of like a hovercraft going across the water. Some interesting other things that I wanted to share about the Caspian Sea Monster today is one, that the actual nickname of the Caspian Sea Monster was not something that was a moniker that the Soviet Union put on the plane. It was actually what the CIA called it when they discovered it in 1967, when they first saw satellite photos of this crazy, weird vehicle going across the Caspian Sea. It is able to move extremely fast and carry very heavy weight loads. So it was a very fascinating technological program that the Soviets had. And the other thing that I also find interesting is that even though it's technically a plane, it actually, because it looks so much like a boat, they actually put it into the Russian Navy as opposed to the Russian Air Force. In fact, they christened it with a bottle of champagne before its maiden voyage. There was only one ever built. It was actually tested all the way till 1980 when pilot error caused a crash and it sank in the Caspian Sea. And then the Soviet Union, because of a lot of other reasons, did not rekindle the exploration of that technology, which I think is a sad thing because it really was a fascinating program that they created. And one point of clarification, I mentioned that the CIA referred to it as the Caspian Sea Monster, which is what we've come to refer to the watch colloquially when we talk about it, both the plane and the watch with the Caspian Sea Monster. But actually the official term from the Russian government or the Soviet government, whichever you prefer, it was Ekranoplan. In fact, this is a good time to show you the Caseback, which is just an amazing Caseback work on this watch, and this is even even with the Caseback protector, you can see how beautiful it is. I love the Caseback work that Vostok Europe does, by the way. I feel like it's a lost art. And look at that. It's almost like a sun ray dial on there. It's just gorgeous. Anyway, you can see on the back that it says Caspian Sea Monster, and then it says Ekranoplan KM at the bottom. Ekranoplan was actually the official name, which means screen effect, which you talk about when you're doing it as an exact translation, which of course is just their words for what we now call ground effect, or what is called ground effect in English. So it's interesting how that name stuck, even though it was a name that was that grew out of their Cold War relationship between the U.S. and the Soviet Union, because, well, the CIA looked at it as being a monster. And actually, that's a good jumping off point, because this is not a small watch. You could actually say this is a sea monster, because it is a fairly large timepiece. And now is the time I'm going to get into the actual specific specs of the watch and give you a quick tour, and then we're going to get into a number of other specialty issues that are related. Issues isn't the wrong word. Specialty items, features, aspects of this watch in greater detail. So to give you the quick tour, we've got two styles here. We have the NH35 version let me change my. Excuse me here, guys, while I change my perspective a little so I can get a little better on the close-up here of the watch. We've got it in what is the word? What does everybody call it? Safety orange. We've got it in the safety orange, which is a really bright, I mean, if you like orange watches, whoo! And then we've got it in kind of like, it's like a tan, it's a light tan color, almost a little yellow in it. It is a really beautiful color on the other one. We have an NH35 execution on the watch, and then we have also the 6S21 execution. So one is going to be your automatic mechanical with the NH35, and the other is going to be the quartz chronograph, which we're going to get into more detail later. This is, let's check it out with my handy dandy caliper. And let's see, let's zero it out so we know we get it right. And we've got a, what do we have here? We have a 46.7 millimeter case. So let's just round up and call it a 47 millimeter case. And then in width, we are at a little over 17 millimeters. So again, not a small watch. This is definitely one of the watches that are in the larger end of the spectrum for Vostok Europe. I think by anybody's standards today, even though there are so many bigger, larger watches out there, a 47 millimeter watch would still be considered a large watch, especially at 17 millimeters thick. And with the knurling lift on this unidirectional rotating bezel on here, it really does give a startling look from a stunning look. It also could be startling. It is a monster after all. A stunning look in terms of from when you look at it edge on. It does have the K1 mineral crystal system, the Gorilla Glass, easy for me to say, the Gorilla Glass system, which puts you right in the middle of the mohs scale, 9 being sapphire, 5 being mineral. This is a 7, so it has nearly the scratch resistance of sapphire and nearly the shatter resistance of mineral. This is a 200 meter, I believe. Yeah, this is a 200 meter or 20 ATM water-resistant watch that makes this a true professional grade dive watch. It does have the Tritium Tube illumination, which I'm going to get into greater detail later. These are both surgical grade stainless steel. This with the bead blasted case here, it kind of gives you a little look of titanium, but this one is actually in stainless steel, so there's no confusion that this is not actually a titanium case on this version of the Ekranoplan. They're both going to come on leather, and there are other alternative straps that we can talk about in just a couple of minutes. In fact, we're going to show you a couple of packages that, while they're not specifically what you would automatically get with a watch, you can put together some really cool packages with this watch with the alternative straps that we have available on r2awatches.com. And I'll switch over here to the light tan one to talk about some of the other features. It is a screw-in caseback, not surprisingly, with it being a professional grade dive quality watch, and all of the watches are actually closed casebacks. There aren't any exhibition casebacks in the current Caspian Sea Monster collection, and they all have the etching of the Caspian Sea Monster on the back. So let me think about other details. It does have a multi-layered dial, which is really cool. I mentioned that it does have the unidirectional rotating bezel. It is a 25 millimeter strap on this, which is important to point out because that is an odd size. But we have found that a 24 works pretty darn well on here, and you can squeeze a 26 onto it if you wanted to put an alternative strap onto this. It's just one of those things where the design as it came together, it just didn't work. If they moved the lugs even 1 millimeter either direction, it just kind of changed the overall look and feel of the watch. So they stuck with the 25 on this, which was the same as the original Caspian Sea Monster. Okay, so I'm going to get into some more details, specific details. I'm going to hold up the orange here to talk a little bit more about the dial and about the tritium tubes. So first of all, if you're not familiar with tritium tube technology is the laser sealed glass tubes that are filled with a substance called tritium, which constantly agitates the luminous material inside the laser sealed tubes so that you get constant illumination. The tubes are guaranteed to last up to 10 years, but they're going to last longer than that because the half-life of tritium is 12.5 years. So, you know, a half-life is in half and then half and then half and to almost infinity before you reach zero. So it's going to be many, many years, possibly up to even 25 before you're going to see serious fade in terms of the tritium tube technology. But what is really cool about this particular one, about the Caspian Sea Monster, this is the only watch in the Vostok Europe lineup that has what are called the Hairlights. Now, MB Microtech is the company that makes the tubes. They make the tubes in Switzerland. In fact, I was lucky enough to do a tour, to go on a tour there with Roger Siegenthaler, the president of MB Microtech, and Gary Gerdvanis, the publisher of About Time magazine, a 3 years ago. And it was really fascinating to look at the process of how they put the tubes together. In fact, we're going to show some footage here so you can see what it looks like inside the place where they make the tubes. What am I looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? The manufacturing facility for the tubes. So you can see some of that and look at how really cool it is how they put this together.
And now she's making the liquid out of the flame, or is that sealing?
She's now destroying the activation in a certain place of the tube, and there that's the place where she do not like to have the coating later on. That's exactly where she prepares.
Say that again now. What is the...
She's delaminating, I guess, the phosphate inside, because that's where the tube will be cut in the future.
Understood.
So,
okay.
From Tracer, but also other watch brands, they're very keen to have good quality, and the coating is the thing which you see with the eye later on. It has to be very homogeneous, no holes, no black dots in, all that stuff. So each individual stick has to be controlled by eye. Also, this needs a lot of training. As I said, to train a person in that lab here needs half a year to a year until the person is really on speed and is producing the power. You can see the black light. This is also for checking whether the coating is proper. With the coating, you make the color. With the tritium, you put the energy in to make it bright. So if we like to do a blue light at the end.
The Hairlights are something that's very new from MB Microtech. They've been out maybe a couple of years now. When Vostok Europe first put these on the Caspian Sea Monster, when it came out, they had literally just come onto the market. And what makes the Hairlights different and special than the standard tritium tubes that you see on this watch or any other, on most other watches that aren't using Hairlights? The Hairlights are the thinnest tritium tubes built today. They are actually 1/3 of a millimeter thick. I want you to think about that. The technology that had to be put together to create Hairlights, 1/3 of a millimeter thick. And they actually still have tritium and luminous material inside. In fact, by the way, the luminous material inside the tube is just like any other luminous material. In this case, it's superluminova when you're talking about MB Microtech. But it's the agitation with the tritium that constantly makes it illuminate, as opposed to when you're wearing a watch that has superluminova, and you have to charge it up in light, preferably a UV light, the sun being the best, and then it's going to fade. That doesn't happen with the tritium tubes. Now, what's really amazing about the Hairlights and why Vostok Europe decided to try them out is that if you look at most watches that have tritium, you'll see that the tritium tube on the hands doesn't run that long. So it doesn't really span the length of the hand. And the reason for that is, and to give you a comparison, the full-size tritium tubes are about 1 millimeter thick. So think about the difference between the Hairlights and the full-size tritium tubes. You're talking about 1 millimeter thick versus 1/3 of a millimeter. What that allows them to do is to make a much longer tube that can go on the hands. And the reason that that's important is watch movements have only so much pressure that you can put on that pinion that holds the hands in place before that pressure is going to cause a problem with the functioning of the movement, specifically the movement being able to properly sweep the hands around on as they go around the chapter ring. So you have to have they have to be light enough for that to happen. Having these Hairlights, and they call them Hairlights because they're pretty much about as thin as a human hair, allows you to have much greater space, a longer tube with much greater surface area on the hands without creating more weight, so that you can get that effect. So that's why the Caspian Sea Monsters have the Hairlights. It's also why the Caspian Sea Monsters are a little bit more expensive than some of the other tritium tube watches that you see from Vostok Europe. And it definitely puts the Ekranoplan up there in the top tier of Vostok Europe watches, similar to, say, the Energia or the Lunico 2 or any of the... you might make an argument that the Caspian Sea Monster is more in line with, say, the Anchar or the Expedition Underground Everest, if you're really somebody who wants to put Vostok Europe watches in tiers. And I don't know why that's suddenly become a hobby of mine lately. Mostly I'm just trying to explain where it fits in with the brand and what you're getting in terms of whether this is more of an entry-level Vostok Europe. I would say that this is mid-level to top tier if you're wanting to kind of put it into the overall catalog of Vostok Europe watches. Another thing that I really love about this particular execution from Vostok Europe with the Caspian Sea Monster, and I'm just going to keep switching back and forth here between the two color executions, is how they did, where did I put my pointer? There it is how they did the chapter ring. As you can see, it's actually a lifted stadium a little bit above the main dial below, and they have these cutouts. So where the tubes are, they actually have a contrasting color with the tubes. And I think that just creates such more interest on this dial. And that's not to mention the really great guilloche waves that are on the dial. They're kind of hard to see in the video, but when they catch the light on your wrist, wow, they are amazing. Oh, actually, is it matte on the orange? Oh, I've got the orange. Yeah, on the orange, it's actually matte in the center orange area. On the tan, which for want of a better term for beige, for want of a better word for calling this, there you can see how it pops. And I'm going to quickly show you too. I am wearing the orange on the wrist right now, and you can see, let me back up a little bit more actually. There you go. And now you can see the watch on the wrist. I have about a 7.5-inch wrist. So you can see how it fits on there. I do not have a big wrist, and again, this is a big watch, but I can comfortably wear this watch, no problem. So I really like how that, like, especially on here with the orange. If this dial were all orange, if those divots where the tritium tubes were also orange, I think it would actually be a lot more plain. I love how that creates this interesting little extra color combo in the watch, and that all goes back to the fact that they 100% design everything in-house, and those kind of special touches that you're not necessarily going to get if you're working with just OEM. And when I say that, I mean, when I talk about custom, I mean they design everything. They start with a blank computer screen and they end with a completed watch. OEM watches, you know, you go and you say, I want this case, I want those hands, I want that dial. You put it together and you slap your label on it. That is not what Vostok Europe does. Everything is 100% custom. The watch is going to come on this really cool leather strap with the contrast stitching, which looks beautiful on both executions. Now, I mentioned earlier that I was going to show you a couple of combos that you can do. First of all, the Caspian Sea Monster does not normally come with does not normally come with the dry box, but at R2A watches, we add the dry box on every Caspian Sea Monster because of the fact that we do see this further up the tiers of Vostok Europe watches, as I mentioned. This is just a combo that you could possibly do, some extra straps that are available on the site. I mentioned earlier that it is a 25 millimeter, but you can make the 24 millimeters from the Expedition North Pole collection really work well on this watch. And here you can see the two orange options, like you've got the NATO with the orange contrast stitching, you've got the all orange. There's also an actual orange and matching silicone that's available for these watches. We don't happen to have them in stock right now, so that's why I'm not able to show you the one that officially comes with the watch right here. And then there's a black NATO and a black silicone as some other options. So we just wanted to show you a couple of packages you could put together. This is a nice combination with the black and black silicones on the beige. We've also now going to be adding a changing tool with every watch that comes with multiple straps from R2A watches, so we can truly say that everyone is a full kit, and they're going to come in the amazing Pelican dive case. And then just another combo you could put together. Here is the orange on the leather, and then we have the orange silicone. Again, these are Expedition North Pole straps, but they will work just fine. The orange silicone and the orange striped NATO, which is a really great fit for this watch. And again, we're adding the changing tool. So those are the basics of this, these two particular Caspian Sea Monsters from Vostok Europe. There are others available. You want to check them all out. We will be going through every single watch that is available at r2awatches.com at some point or another throughout this journey on these new videos that we're doing and posting on YouTube. So you want to come back if you want to learn more about some of the other Caspian Sea Monsters, and we did one quite recently. So this is the orange, that safety orange, that amazing safety orange with the bead blasted case, and I love the knurling on that unidirectional bezel. It's so awesome. And then we have the beige, and I didn't even get to it, and I'm not going to have time now, about the 6S movement. It is just a fantastic movement I'm just going to quickly show you that when you activate the chronograph, how it almost sweeps like a mechanical watch. Like I always say, there are quartz movements and there are quartz movements. These are the really high-end upper echelon of quartz movements. And then, of course, the NH35, that workhorse movement from Seiko with the automatic. Well, until next time, I'm Craig Hester with R2AWatches.com. This has been the Caspian Sea Monster, and hey, keep watching.